All right, guys, so it has been a while since I made a YouTube exclusive video, but I think it's time. I want to give you my take on geopolitics, on the tariffs, and what I generally think about markets and, geopolitics. So I don't have a fancy setup, no mic, lighting. I don't have a bookshelf with all the books I read, even though there are a lot. But I have certain viewpoints that I see no one else has. All right, so let's start with the first one I want to talk about, and that's geopolitics. So tomorrow, on Saturday, April the 12th, Trump will meet Iran's leaders in Oman, for some reason, to discuss their nuclear deal. So for weeks now, you will see on YouTube everyone talking about the same thing, right? Oh, will the US, will Trump go to war with Iran? And for weeks now, if you watch me on TikTok, I already said no, they won't, because this entire thing is a pro wrestling fake. It's a bluff. Why do I know that there's B-2 bombers in the Diego Garcia Air Base? Why do we know that? Why do we know military secrets that shouldn't be known to the public? There's two options. Option one is they're just grossly incompetent, and it's an embarrassment that certain military secrets are just freely available to the public. Option two, which is more likely, is that they want us to know. They want to make it big and threatening, a big pro wrestling show. Iran is not building nuclear weapons, and Trump knows this. Russia knows this, China knows this, Iran knows this, everyone knows that. But Trump is desperately needing a win. He is, until now, to be honest, a big orange disappointment, and he needs a win desperately. So, what is he gonna get out of this? At the beginning of his term, he could have just get out of the Ukraine war and blame it on Biden. But he didn't. I don't know why. He kept it going, right? So the Ukraine war is lost from a Western perspective, right? From the Western side. Russia is not going to allow peacekeepers or NATO troops in Ukraine, like Europe and the West wants, because that's the reason for the war in the first place. That would be ridiculous if they agreed for that. Then put peacekeepers into Ukraine for 7 years or something, and let them rearm and then reignite the war again, right? No, of course Russia is not gonna do that. Especially they're not going to agree on that if they're winning the war, which they are, right? So how Europe doesn't want to end the war in Ukraine either. The military-industrial complex doesn't want to end the wars, right? So how's Trump getting out of that situation without looking weak, without looking like a loser? I think in one of his books, he says to never go out of a deal not winning, or something like that, around those lines. I forgot. To never seem like you lost. Even if you lost, you have to look like you won. And I've been following Trump for a long time now, for years now, and I think I know what is going through in his head, right? So how's he gonna get out of that without looking weak? Okay, so how's he gonna do that is he will sign a deal with Iran to not build nuclear weapons, which they were not going to build in the first place. But that will, they're going to be like, okay, Iran, you're not going to build nuclear weapons. And Iran's going to be like, looking back, and then Putin is like, duh. And Iran will sign it. Okay, US, I will sign the deal. All right, you won. Right? They're going to sign that deal. And then Trump will look like, oh, look, I prevented World War III. Iran's not building nuclear weapons. We don't have to engage militarily. And Russia okay, all right, you know what? We give you, we buy into your demands in Ukraine, all right? Um, you know, we give you that win, and you are going to be the mediator for Iran. So it's not going to be not United Nations. It's not going to be us looking for Iran and what they do with their nuclear program. It's going to be you, possibly China. So you're going to be the mediator. Okay? And that's his grand deal. That's what I think. I think there is not going to be a war with Iran. You need a certain tension always in the Middle East. How is the Israel lobby going to react on that? I don't know. What you have to know is that the elites, right, that are running that are running Washington, they're made up of 3 distinct factions. So look, that's what I see. Okay, I see 3 distinct factions, and those are the military-industrial complex. That's one. The globalists, those who initiated COVID, and the Zionists. That's what I call them. Basically, pro-Israel. They work for the interest of Israel. Okay, nothing wrong with that. That's just what I call them. So you have the pro-Israel lobby, you have the globalists, and you have the military-industrial complex. And these 3 factions, they are basically the elites. I know Trump has a lot of warmongers around him. He has a lot of people telling him wanting this war, right? Opening new fronts. Instead of, like, what do you do when you lose a war? That's the strategy Biden used. What you do when you lose a war, you just start another one. What happens if you lose that one? You start another one, another one, another one, right? That's the strategy. So I don't know how Bibi Netanyahu will react. He did not react good on the last interview when Trump mentioned that he is in direct talks with Iran. He seemed like he doesn't like that fact, like based on his facial reaction during that interview. But we'll see. I could be totally wrong. Maybe he starts World War III tomorrow. I don't know. From my perspective, from what I know and see, like, you have to learn to not look at what people say, but to look at their actions. And all the actions of not only Trump, but Iran, Russia, it's indicating that there's not going to be a war, right? So no new developments in Ukraine war. Syria, I didn't tune into. But that's basically my geopolitical update. So I want to talk a little bit about tariffs, not terrorists. I have been there, not worth it, guys. Don't go there. Never again. So about tariffs. So I support the tariffs. And I support them for a very specific reason. Okay? So what is that reason? All right. How to explain? All right. So whenever, since 2009, right? Not 2009, since the dot-com bubble, right? We are in a perpetual boom market that overwhelmingly benefited tech because the government kept bailing out the markets, kept printing more money. Money printer go burr, get out of the recession, blah, blah, blah. So what you're seeing right now with the market downturn and the recession that will officially start this summer, around June, what you will see should have happened in 2022 when we had the bank failures in the US, right? Like Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank. But we did not. We had a Democrat in office, could not allow a recession, make them look bad. So markets were manipulated. As you guys know, like whoever follows me for years now, you know that commodity prices are brutally manipulated. Markets were manipulated and propped up by the government. The employment numbers are propped up. They're mostly government employees, making the employment numbers look good. The inflation expectation is low because they kept oil prices low artificially. And all the economic data in reality is much, much worse than it was shown to us during the Biden administration. And the Silicon Valley Bank and these other banks, they got bailed out, not 3 months, not 4 months later, like in 2009. It took 4 months for the Fed, for the government to make a decision what to do with these banks and to bail them out. No, same day. Same day bailouts. So they got a bailout right away, right? So now, what's the situation now, right? If Trump would have caved in to the markets and reversed all the tariffs, right, which he did not, the blanket 10% tariff is still there, and the 100+% tariff on China is still active, and there's no indication that there will be bailouts in those sectors like tech, right? That shows me, right, that Trump is not going to bail them out, and we will enter the recession that is desperately needed. If you are drunk and to avoid the hangover you drink more, you can do that a few times, but eventually you're gonna, unalive yourself from alcohol poisoning, right? So you need that hangover, you have to wind down, and we need that recession so we can start healing. So the thing is, he could have gone money printer go burr, bomb, stimulus, keep interest rates low, cut rates, and then we would end where we would have ended, like I said, for years, which is a stagflationary recession, depression, similar to what we had in the 1970s. I talk about it in my book, I talk about it in my newsletters and on my TikTok channel. You guys know, everyone following me knows what a stagflation is, what that means. And we will have a stagflation, right? So you have inflation, possibly hyperinflation, and you're gonna be in a depression with high unemployment. That's where we are heading to, right? But now, with the tariffs not reversing, with the markets not being bailed out, and us entering a recession, we avoided that, I think. We're gonna have a vanilla recession. So it's gonna be a semi-bad recession, but at least we're not gonna enter hyperinflation like right away. That was avoided with Trump's tariffs. For years, I'm going to explain, for years, the libertarians are talking about at least a flat tax or some sort of sales tax. And that's what the tariffs are. The tariffs that Trump implements are nothing else but a national sales tax. So, the inflation or the hyperinflation that will probably going to happen in this scenario, right, where we just keep bailing out, keep printing money, and the world de-dollarizing as we push them away from us, that scenario might be avoided now through that. But the cure is to cut spending, because the inflation is caused by government spending. The government spending that money that was printed in the economy, that's what's causing the inflation. If you just print money and lock it up in a locker, it's not going to cause inflation, right? So the government spending money on bullshit, right? That's what's causing the inflation. So over 70%, and I know you guys are going to disagree, of government spending, all right, which is close to $4 trillion a year. So 3.5, something around $3.5 trillion a year goes to welfare. Biggest chunk is Social Security and Medicare. If you want to seriously cut spending and reverse the trajectory we're in, you would have to cut our spending to the bone, which would mean getting rid of welfare programs like Social Security and Medicare. That's a political option that is absolutely not viable, politically not viable. It's impossible. So you can't cut spending. I know like what they're doing with Elon Musk, firing like government employees that are not needed. That's a drop. It's a drop in the bucket. If you want to be serious about cutting spending, you have to cut welfare. And the problem is, in reality, you cannot prove a negative. You can't prove a hypothetical. If you actually do the right thing and cut spending, what will you see on TV? Oh, this poor single mom here, oh, she can't feed her children, or poor gran can't pay her rent. And they're gonna vote Democrat, and then they're gonna call Trump Hitler. They already call him Hitler, but he's gonna be like super Hitler, I guess. Even though that might have, that is what prevented hyperinflation and a financial collapse and possibly civil war in the US. But you can't prove it in that scenario, right? You can't prove it. So what can you do? You can increase taxes, but people are gonna be pissed about that too, right? The highest tax bracket in the US is already paying all the taxes. Net taxes in the West in general, it doesn't matter which country, in Europe, in the US, net taxpayers are only the top 20%. The top 20% of earners are net taxpayers. 80%, the rest, the remaining 80% of people living in the US are not contributing in taxes. Oh, but I pay my taxes. No, you don't. You get all your taxes back at the end of the year. Okay? You're not paying your fucking taxes. All right? So the US, the American mentality right now, what they want is, I want free shit, give me free stuff, but I don't want to pay for it. All right? So either somebody's going to pay for it, and then you live like in a tiny home, like in Sweden, where everyone actually pays 60% in taxes, or, okay, you see your living standard getting eroded with inflation, like you see in the US. So what can you do? In the 1800s, the US government exclusively financed themselves via tariffs, because tariffs, again, are nothing else but a national sales tax. That's the closest thing we have to a flat tax. So using the tariffs, you were able to tax people which you otherwise wouldn't be able to tax. Instead of, you either cut spending or you raise taxes, but both of which are politically not viable. So you implement tariffs to pay for the free stuff that people demand. And if you calculate all the tariffs together, like the tariffs of each country and together, it's suspiciously close to about $1 trillion a year. So what Trump is doing, actually, he is making the decision, it has to be made, cutting spending, but he's doing, like the thing you have to do, he's doing in a hidden way, in a way around the obvious that the average normie doesn't understand, doesn't get, right? And they still hate him. So I'm totally for the tariffs. So the negative aspects of those tariffs, though, is that you push further away people from the US. So if you tariff China, and that's the biggest issue I see in every YouTube video I watch regarding the tariffs or geopolitics. They look at data that goes back 20 years. They say, oh, but China needs the US to sell all their free stuff, all their cheap shit to the US. They need them. The fundamentals have changed, though. The fundamentals of the past 3 years are not the same as they were even in 2010. So it makes no sense to compare a time where things were fundamentally different to how it is now. Because now you have BRICS. Now you have an actual alternative to the dollar. So if I was China, I would dump all my bonds, increase the value of yuan, peg yuan to gold or to the BRICS blockchain and tie that to gold, and look east and sell my stuff to other countries, and not the US. You think China can't do that? They absolutely can. The later they can, for sure. And then that's it. If you have a global currency like the US does, all right, you have basically a free money machine. You can create ones and zeros on a sheet of, on a digital sheet, and get goods and services for that. And the inflation is being paid for globally by other countries. They get inflation, they get pieces of paper, you get goods and services. You reap the benefits from that. That's perfect. But if you implement tariffs and you're in a situation where you isolate yourself, so I firmly believe that Trump does care about America. He wants the best for America. And I think that's his ultimate plan. He wants to isolate America in a way that they start producing their own things. But whoever his economic advisor is, that's not how you implement tariffs. All right? You threaten tariffs, you increase them by small percentage increments over long periods of time. So you give the industries that you want to benefit inside the US time to adjust, build factories, build jobs, do that, right? But that's not the case. You can't just increase tariffs to like 100% and blanket tariffs on everyone and make them look away. Out of 50 countries that were tariffed, only 15 are looking for making a deal with the US. Okay? The rest, are they hurt? Yes. They're hurt by the tariffs. Right? But they can find an alternative. Okay? If you put tariffs on a water bottle from China, the profit margins are super low. They're already super low. And now we put a tariff on that. China's not going to pay that tariff. Walmart has to buy that thing now for a higher price. They're not going to pay the tariff either. They're simply going to increase their prices. So who's going to pay the tariff? The American people. So short-term struggle, benefit, maybe you avoided hyperinflation, maybe you avoided the financial disaster you're running into, like you make it a little softer, right? But the decision of doing that was between being shit in the face and peed in the mouth. Which one do you choose? Right? Oh, peed in the mouth, okay. So tariffs and inflation and a recession, okay. Tariffs, inflation, and recession, or financial collapse. So don't get me wrong, the overall trajectory of the US is still the same, right? The overall direction is still the same. But instead of going in a bow, maybe it goes a bit straight, or the overall direction is still the same. You're running into a financial disaster. If the world drops the dollar, drops all their bonds, by the way, no one is buying US bonds. The only ones buying US bonds are Europe. Even Japan's dumping bonds. And Europe buys those bonds from money they get via swap lines from the American Federal Reserve. So they print the money, give it to Europe. Europe buys those bonds, cause inflation in Europe, and there you go. You have extra cash as the US. Nice, huh? So all right. So how do we know where we are, where we stand? Okay. So Japan and Europe are going to be cannibalized first. before the US will collapse financially. Okay? Yeah, anyway, it's kind of weird. I talk to myself for half an hour, but yeah, that's my update. If you have any thoughts, anything you want me to talk about, any questions, let me know in the comments below. Like and share, press the bell button, and let's see if if this channel grows, if I continue doing this more frequently. And let's see if World War III starts tomorrow. I keep you guys updated. My newsletter is still up. The link is below, like all my links to my books, my newsletter, my articles that I write. And there's a new project I'm working on. I'm gonna talk about it maybe next time. All right. So anyways, appreciate everyone who was supporting me for all this time, and it's getting dark now. Take care.